Raider Nation. Thank you for joining us on the Only Nation podcast, brought to you by the Raider Ramble. My name is Heidi, but you may know me as Kevlar Prom Dress or even Raider Ladybug. I'm here with Raider Homer and T3 Raider Facts. We're ready to talk some Raiders football together.
Always ready to talk Raider football, especially with two great co-hosts.
Thank you, Homer. It may be the off season, but talking Raider football, is always in season. So let's go.
Today on the show, we will briefly review some of the latest Raiders news, which is not much since we're still in the off season. And then we will welcome in our special guest, Scott Gulbransen from the Silver and Black Today and Raider Nation Radio.
Oh, yeah, I'm excited about this interview.
This will be great.
I love listening to Raider Nation Radio, so this is going to be fun. And this is going to kick off a series of interviews with hosts from Raider Nation Radio, so I'm excited to get into this episode. All right, and Raider Nation, we want to hear from you. So here's how you can get in touch with us. Give us a call on the Only Nation podcast voicemail line at 904-701-8667. That's 904-701-8667. 6-7. We want to hear what y'all think is going to happen in the off season and what y'all's takes are on our interviews. So let us know, Raider Nation. Get in touch with us.
Here's the latest Raider news.
The Las Vegas Raiders announced the following defensive coaching additions released this past Friday. In addition to defensive coordinator Gus Bradley, announced 2 weeks ago, and Rod Marinelli, who stays on as the defensive line coach, Bradley is bringing in Ron Milas from the Los Angeles Chargers to coach the defensive backs, Richard Smith, also from the Chargers, to coach the linebackers. Addison Lynch is also coming from the Chargers to assist Ron Milas with the defensive backs, and Ryan Milas, note the last name, also comes in from Los Angeles as a defensive quality control coach, which means he will be doing a lot of film breakdown work for the upcoming opponents.
That's a whole lot of Chargers coming over here to the Raiders. I don't know. It's not Wade Phillips. This is not Wade Phillips' crew, but we just got to go with it. Bradley has had better defenses than Gunther did. Now, I know that Peggy's not too happy with this move. A lot of people aren't too happy, but like I said, I'm just going to kind of hang tight and see what happens because apparently Gus Bradley, from what I've heard from Raider Nation Radio hosts, and I think Scott was one of them, was talking about how they actually played well against the Chiefs and that Bradley is actually a good coach as far as developing young talent. So I'm just going to go with it. I'm going to roll with it and see what happens.
I'm ready to roll with this because the fact that we're bringing in so much talent from the Chargers, that instantly makes us better within the division, which is one of the goals. And the other thing is Gus Bradley, in addition to being a good coach and helping to turn the defense around, is a good teacher. And I think that's what a lot of these guys, particularly the defensive backfield, need, is someone who can come in strong and be a good instructor and really help them know how to play the game within the defensive schemes he's got lined up. So I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, I'm still comfortable with the hire, and I'm fine with him bringing in his crew. Did they have a great year this past season? No, I think they were ranked like 22, but it was still way ahead of where we were.
Yeah.
I'll take it.
Yeah. Any improvement is a good improvement on the defense right now. We were so close. We talk about a handful of games that we could have won. There was at least 3 that the ball was given to the opposing offense with our defense needing to make a stop, and it just didn't happen. So, yes, if we can move up, to 20s or even the mid-teens, man, we can win those games.
I'm convinced if Gus Bradley's defense had just been healthier during the course of the year, they would have had a much higher ranking than they had.
Possibly.
Yeah. Noah Strang of Silver and Black Today recently released an in-depth article on several potential rookie quarterbacks eligible in this year's draft, not as a replacement for Derek Carr, but as someone who can learn and develop with the team. Included in the article are breakdowns of Georgia's Jamie Newman, Kellen Mond of Texas A&M, and Shane Buechele of SMU. It is an excellent article, and you should definitely check it out.
Yeah, there are some really good talent available in quarterback realm in this draft, and I hope that the Raiders pick up one either in the second or third round. And maybe I'm one of the few people that thinks that we should dip in that early. But since we did not pick up a quarterback last year, I really think we need to pick up one this year to develop and sit behind Derek Carr and have them ready. I don't think that their friend Nate Peterman is the guy. I really don't. And I think we need to bring in somebody young and have them on that rookie deal, have them develop under Carr, and have them ready in case he does need to come in.
I've read the article. It was a well-written article. I am not of the mind to get a rookie quarterback, though. Gruden likes veteran quarterbacks, so that's what I want to see him do, is get a veteran quarterback. And there are like 18 quarterbacks going to hit the market this year. So this year, we can take a good look at getting a young, up-and-coming quarterback to sign, and develop under Carr. Now, this is my theory. We all like to play armchair GM, right? Monday morning GM. So here it is. I want to see a three-way trade involving Sam Darnold, Watson, and 2 first-round picks that the Texans want for Watson. What I want us to do is work it out with the Jets to where we send Mariota to Houston. They send Watson to the Jets, and then the Jets send the 2 first-round picks to Houston, and we get Sam Darnold. I know that sounds crazy, right? But we are going to talk here in a little bit about cap space. Moving Mariota may save a little bit of cap space, and then we could probably get Sam Darnold signed for less because he's coming off of a rookie contract where he didn't perform so well. But I think that he does have the physical ability to play in a Gruden offense. When I saw him break that 46-yarder, I mean, he was juking defenders against the Broncos all the way to the house. I was just waiting for the Raider Nation to jump on that and say, see, you got to have a running quarterback. And then, of course, Sam Darnold, pretty much, even though it's a Gunther-led defense, he played well against us. And if you look at the Jets' schedule in 2020, it was actually pretty tough. They played some pretty good teams. So I think Sam Darnold could come in. We could get him a cheaper contract than we have for Mariota, and we can develop him under Carr. Now, I know, again, that's a long shot, but hey, why not? That's my idea.
Still on the Sam Darnold thing.
Hey, I mean, that's a win-win. We wouldn't lose any draft capital, right? We free up cap space, and we get a quarterback that can run and pass. That's young enough to, he can be developed a little bit. I think that's a good move. If I'm the Raiders, that's what I'm looking to do. Seeing that, Mayock comes out and talks about, always looking to improve, and here we are talking about getting Carr's replacement. I think that would be the better move.
And that's why I love you, man, because you've come out right out there on the limb with your opinion. I do not agree with you, but if you may be right, I'd be the first one willing to say I was wrong, but I don't think you're right with this one. So I'm going to respectfully disagree, and we'll just see what happens.
Yeah, Darnold needs to learn how to hold on to the ball. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I mean, there are crazier ideas out there, like Raider Rob from Raider Fan Radio. He wants to trade the house to move up and draft Trevor Lawrence. Now, I don't really see that's not going to happen, but I'm thinking more of a realistic trade. But yeah, you never know. It could happen, may not happen.
Yeah, and with the price set today with the Jared Goff and Matt Stafford trade, quarterbacks are going for a pretty penny still.
Well, that just shows you what Jared Goff's value was as the number 1 overall pick a couple of years ago.
All right, and our good friends at the Raider Ramble put out an excellent piece this week on all the potential cap casualties that the Raiders faced going into the 2021 season. Read how General Manager Mike Mayock tries to work his way out of a potentially sticky cap situation during the offseason. Who may be staying and who may be going.
Trent Brown, if anybody goes in this article, I think it's definitely Trent Brown. Like, you just heard my opinion on Mariota, how I think we should save some money with Mariota. But if that's not the case, keep Mariota because he's a good backup. And we saw that when he came in when Carr got hurt, that he can keep us in the game. If our defense could have came out with a stop, we could have won that game. But you got to keep Mariota, and then the other one was who? Tyrell Williams. You got to keep Mariota, and you got to keep Williams. or, despite whatever the rumor was about the locker room situation, I'd still think, you might want to sign Aguilar just because he did help. He was a deep threat. He was a good addition to the offense. But if you keep Tyrell Williams also, you got two legitimate threats at 1 and 2. And then you got Renfro in the middle, and they were thinking about moving Ruggs in the middle, or in the slot, excuse me. So you still got some room right there for those guys to grow, and then Ruggs can grow on the outside, but it won't have to be all on him. And then Edwards can grow a little bit behind Tyrell Williams. And, of course, you still have Waller the baller. So, I don't know. I think that Tyrell Williams is a must-keep, and so is Mariota. But Trent Brown, you got to go.
Well, I'll tell you two guys I hope they wrap up really quickly, and that's Denzel Good and Jonathan Hankins. Those are two guys who are kind of under the radar a little bit, but they really help to bolster those lines, and we really need that on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball. So regardless of the big names, I think those are two they need to seal up and seal up quick.
Yeah, and the Ramble also had a great article this week about LaMarcus Joyner. It was as if the writer spoke and said everything that I wanted to say about it. You should check it out.
All right. I've got hope for LaMarcus Joyner. I think if we put him at free safety, I think he'll do a good job.
Yep.
Yeah, Gus Bradley can really, I think, ease Raider Nation's mind if he makes a move like that. Maybe we go after a slot corner just in case Amik Robinson doesn't quite work out. But I think that moving Joyner for the last year of his contract to safety would really salvage that free agent signing that just hasn't quite worked out yet.
My personal opinion is that Jonathan Abram at free safety made as much sense as Garyon Conley at cornerback. So that lets you know how I feel there.
Right, now we would like to present a special interview with Scott Gulbransen, who has boots on the ground in Vegas. Scott is the founder, host, and executive producer of Silver and Black Today on Raiders' flagship station, Raider Nation Radio. He is an accomplished broadcaster, is on the cutting edge of social media, and is very involved with public relations. We are so happy that Scott has agreed to jump on the show with us. Welcome to the Only Nation podcast, Scott.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, Scott, I'm going to start off. Thanks again for coming on with us. If you could, to explain the significant impact that Raider Nation Radio has had, not just on the Raider organization and its players, but also the fan base.
Yeah, it's interesting because if you look around the NFL with radio and how the teams kind of deal with radio, because the way the process works is, it's basically like a bid. So when the Raiders were coming to Las Vegas, I was actually on a different station. I was on CBS Sports Radio 1140 here, where I did a show on the weekends. I started with the website that led to a podcast, and then the podcast did so well that I got a meeting with the radio station, and they wanted me to come on. Of course, this is 3 years before the Raiders even came to Las Vegas, and they were still in Oakland. And that whole process kind of came about. But the way it usually works is the local stations, a team, if they're already in the market, in this case, the team was coming to the market, they kind of bid for it, right? So there was, I think, 3 radio groups. It was Entercom, which owns CBS Sports Radio, and then it was iHeartRadio here, which they have a bunch of stations here in town. They don't have any sports stations. And then it was Lotus Broadcasting, which is where Raider Nation Radio is. And they bid on it, and kind of whoever puts together the best bid with the highest dollar figure and all that kind of stuff wins the contract. And so the contract and the way that Lotus went about the Raider approach was they went to them and said, listen, we're going to give you an entire station, because Lotus Broadcasting here in Las Vegas has 4 sports stations. They have 4 FM stations, and most of them lead in the area. So like in Las Vegas, ESPN 1100 here, which is one of our stations too, they are the lead. But what Lotus did, and the people at Lotus who were so smart about it, was that they went to the Raiders and said, we're not only going to give you programming and all that kind of stuff, but we're going to give you the entire station. We're going to call it Raider Nation Radio. We're going to do all this stuff. So it was pretty groundbreaking, because if you look around the NFL, I mean, obviously every NFL team has a radio deal in their market, but none of them have one completely dedicated to the team. So the fact that it's called Raider Nation Radio is pretty remarkable. And so I think the significance of it is twofold. One is, from an overall radio business perspective, it's a completely new model. Nobody's ever done it, because I think a lot of radio stations, and it's smart to a certain degree, because they say, okay, well, during the football season, the regular season, from really July through the Super Bowl, that makes sense. We can fill every day full of Raider content. That's not a big deal. But when it's June, how are you going to devote a whole station to the Raiders? And the truth is, even on our show on Silver and Black today, we'll continue to put Raider stuff first. But yeah, we'll talk baseball. We'll talk kind of more general sports during the offseason. But as you guys know, because you cover it too, is the fact that the NFL is all year round now, right? There's always something going on. It's not always team specific per se, but the fact that there's always something going on, I think is good. So from that perspective, that's one. Number two, for the Raiders, the significance, and I don't need to tell you guys, I didn't grow up a Raider fan like you guys did, and I didn't live and breathe it until I started covering the team when I started the website 3.5 years ago. But it's significant because the Raiders have never had, just like they've never had their own stadium, they've never had a radio station that has treated them, and I say well, not the fact that we report things only positively, because we don't, but the fact that they've never had a radio home that gave them the justice. When the Bay Area and they were on the Game, and those guys up there do a fine job, but they were never all Raiders. There was some adversarial relationship there as the team was looking to leave, and the whole stadium thing in Oakland that didn't happen. So from that perspective, Raiders fans and the team itself, the organization itself, finally kind of get the due that they deserve. And I think that is significant. And when I talk to fans every day on the phones, and when they were sending me messages, especially when we first launched, they were just ecstatic with it. That's why, we have so many listeners. I mean, when you listen to our shows on the air, you never hear like just all calls from Las Vegas, right? You hear calls from everywhere. I have calls every day, New Jersey, Louisiana, of course, California, Colorado, all over the country, because thank goodness for streaming, they're everywhere. So Raider fans across the country can now listen daily and talk about their team, hear about their team, get their news, get interviews that you're not going to get anywhere else, all that kind of stuff. So I think for those two reasons particularly, it's a significant change. And I think you'll see other teams follow suit with it in the future, because it really is a new model.
And what I'm amazed about is the fact that, and Q and I have talked about this with his podcast, but about the number of fans who call into our shows. I talk about ours being Raiders shows, who are not Raiders fans, who are fans from other shows. They're starving to get on content of a show on the daily that really hits to the fans. And so I think what we have really is unique as far as our fan base goes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I also think, though, that, for example, too, with great podcasts out there like you guys, too. And again, I started as a podcaster, basically. I have a lot of radio experience from earlier in my career, but I hadn't done it in a long time. And I think that's the thing. I don't think you'll find another fan base. Now, every team's got podcasts. Like, Q's part of the Locked On Network, which has one for every team and all that. And then there are other fan podcasts and things like that. But I've never seen not just the sheer amount of great content like you guys do with podcasts, but also the fact that they're so good. Like, I listen to a lot of other stuff as the Raiders are playing teams, and I listen to other podcasts and kind of all that. And, God bless them. They're doing their best. I'm not saying that people shouldn't do that, but the sheer quality of Raider podcasts throughout the system is amazing. And I think that is indicative of the fact that, that's what Raider fans do. They're so loyal. They're so good. They care so much about their team. It's not, and we get callers all the time. I had one on Friday that says, look, it's a lifestyle. It's not just being a fan of a team. It's a whole lifestyle. And I think nothing illustrates that better than Raider Nation.
Yeah, Raider Nation has a lot of talent from, podcasters, broadcasters, musicians, graphic artists, and even the super fans that create these personas, that carry on through the years and the decades. And some of them become like generational, iconic characters. But yeah, the Raider Nation deserves something like the Raider Nation Radio, especially with mainstream media always bashing the Raiders. Now, you mentioned that, you don't always just prop up the Raiders. A lot of times you are seriously debating what the Raiders can do to improve or whatnot, but it's not just outright bashing the Raiders. And it's good to hear from the Raider Nation for the most part, but don't get me wrong. Sometimes it's kind of hard to listen to Gangsta Raider. You know what I mean? Because Raider Nation is so passionate that they call in with these chips on their shoulders, and it's kind of frustrating to hear because, you're not going to quit on the team. you're going to, so stay positive, be unified, and don't necessarily trash the team. But, I get it, though. Raider Nation needs to vent. And it's nice to have a place like Raider Nation Radio.
And I agree with you. And it's funny, too, because, my background, and I've always been very open about it. There's some people out there who always try to hammer me over the head like I'm some shill or something like that. But, I grew up a Chargers fan, right? So I grew up a Chargers fan, and I hated the Raiders. Right. And I look back at it now, and with age and perspective, you can kind of see things more clearly. And I know that the reason I hated the Raiders back then when I was younger was because I was a Charger fan and they always sucked and they didn't have the history of the Raiders. Right. And I think you're right. I think that Raider fan is so passionate. And just like every other piece of society, Raider Homer, is the fact that you're always going to have a 10% of people who follow a team who like a political point of view or whatever it is that are just not good people. It doesn't matter that they're Raider fan. And so we hear from that. We see that in the Derek Carr thing. Like, the Derek Carr thing, I've always been very down the middle about it to say, look, I like Derek Carr. I think he's a good quarterback. I think the Raiders can win with Derek Carr. But I've also, for the last week, I've explored the Deshaun Watson thing. And could the Raiders? I had a guest on Friday, Cody Benjamin from CBS, who talked about, the Raiders could actually make a play for Deshaun Watson if they want to. And then I had people come, now you're switching. Now you're an anti-Derek Carr. And I said, no. I said throughout the whole process, it's not about not being or liking Derek Carr. It's just that I cover the team and the team has a perspective and it's a business. And so if the Raiders have an opportunity to get better, and I do think Deshaun Watson's a better quarterback, has more upside. That doesn't mean Derek Carr's not a top 10 quarterback, because he is. He's got the numbers to show that. But at the same time, you have to explore those things. And when you do, in my case, I'm doing 2 hours a day and building content. And I don't just throw content out there to throw content out there, but you explore that. And what I've discovered is that there are some fans, and this goes for not just the Raiders, but I think all teams. There are some fans, they only want to hear their point of view parroted back at them, right? It's like if you look at it, I'm just going to use, and I don't get political, but if you use the two sides of the political spectrum, you have on TV, you have MSNBC and you have Fox News, right? And there's people who tune in to only those channels because it tells them exactly what they want to hear and already believe. While most people, I think, are more in the middle, and they say, you know what? I might agree with one side on this. I might agree with people who think Derek Carr is great, and I might agree with some people who bring up questions about the way he plays. And I think that's the most of the people, is they just want their team to win. They want their team the best they can be. And so they're willing to discuss and think about and even come back and say, hey, listen, Scott, I think you're wrong because this. And that's great. I think that's the whole point of it. I think if we get into a vacuum where it's only positive or it's only negative, that's where I think people get harmed.
That's the thing, though. People say, I just want to win when they're talking about Derek Carr, bashing Derek Carr. That's one thing that really bothers me. That's what I was kind of getting to, is that everybody wants to win. So you can't say that, I just want to win. So this justifies my argument against Derek Carr. It's like we all want to win, but it's about your approach. You know what I mean? In my mind, like when you talk to Wayne, you've talked to Wayne, when you talk to him, he talks about being positive. And, that guy has been through a lot as a Raider fan, a lot of losing and very little winning. Of course, he was back then in the 80s, though. So he saw the pinnacle. He saw the glory land, right? But you know what? It is about staying positive. And that's like, I think that's the most important thing to really stress right now. Just stay positive. And you bring up some of the politics, we don't want to go too deep into it, but in today's world, that's what we really need is unity overall.
That's really well said, because I think that you can look at it two ways. And I understand, listen, if you're like, I'm 50 years old. So if I was a Raider fan and for 50 years now, I would have been around as I was for the Super Bowl win in '83, right? So I remember that. But if you're a 25-year-old Raider fan or a 30-year-old Raider fan, that's history film for you. You didn't live it, right? So you didn't see much of that. So I understand the frustration. Yeah. And like I said, having been and I gave up on the Chargers. The reason I gave up on the Chargers is because I moved out of San Diego and they were moving from San Diego. I knew it was going to happen. And that organization is trash from the ownership down, and it was just getting worse. And so for me, I just got to a place in life where I was like, it's not making me happy. And so I think if you're a Raider fan and you look at it, and this is not just me pumping Vegas, but look, this team is now in a point where it has things it's never had in its history. right? It has its own stadium. It has revenues. It has corporate sponsorships. It never had in Oakland. And, shout out to everybody in Oakland. The history there is so vital to this franchise, and it always will be, and it should always be appreciated, as is the history in Los Angeles, too, as short as that was compared to Oakland. But to me, it's like you wake up every day, Homer, right? And you have the opportunity to decide, am I going to be positive today, or am I going to be negative and just wallow in the negativity and all of the things of the past? You can't change the past. All you can do is change the future. Now, that said, 2020, disappointing year, right? On the field. There's no other way to do it. Everybody in the organization, from the coach to the general manager to the players, have said that 8-8 was not good enough, right? So that you have recognition there, but do you have faith that it's getting better and that they've turned a corner? Now, on the field is one thing. The organization overall, because I've seen it since the moment that they decided they were going to come here, I've seen the community here in Las Vegas, which I know everybody out there doesn't have the opportunity because you don't live here, but you see what's happening, what they've done in the community, the corporate support, the fan support, all the facilities. You guys, unfortunately, this year couldn't go to the stadium. I was inside the stadium. I've been inside the facility, obviously covering practice over in Henderson. And it's like, wow, they now have a foundation to build from. But the old saying, Rome wasn't built in a day. So you can't go from where the Raiders were to being a perennial championship team in a season. It's going to take a little bit of time. They got to make a big jump next year. But I think the future, you got to look to the future. The future looks really bright. And you have to do your best to say, I know they burned me in the past as a fan, and I got excited and got disappointed, but I really do think this is a new chapter, and you have to realize that.
Homer, I think he pretty much covered question 3. Do you want to go ahead and just throw question 4 out there? Or we'll pick it up from there.
Oh, well, no, I mean, yeah, we touched on Derek Carr, and I guess the Derek Carr divide in the Raider Nation, but there's a lot of, speculation as far as Watts being traded. Now, I'm not a fan of trading Derek Carr and a couple of first rounders to Houston for Watson. But one thing that I would like to see, because I'm a fan of the Raiders getting Sam Darnold. So I would like, since Watson wants to go to the New York Jets, I would like the Watson to go to the Jets to give the first round picks to Houston, and then us to send Mariota to Houston. That way we get Sam Darnold. I know that seems kind of crazy, but Sam Darnold broke that 46-yard touchdown run against Denver. He threw the ball well against us, even though we had Gunther, as a defensive coordinator. I think the kid is a good quarterback. I mean, you're a professional radio guy. How crazy is that scenario?
You know what I've learned, Homer, is that nothing's ever crazy in professional sports, because just when you think something can't happen, it does. And for me, though, so I admit this on the show all the time. I am actually a big Deshaun Watson fan. I'm not really a big fan all the time of players per se, but I think he's a different talent. That said, I think Sam Darnold hasn't had an opportunity. He was in New York, a difficult situation. He never got good coaching. And so from that perspective, Sam Darnold to me is intriguing. I don't think the book is written on him. There's a lot of people who write off certain quarterbacks and say that they don't have an opportunity or they'll never make it or whatnot. But to me, anything is possible. Again, I rather have Watson because he's 25 years old. I know Darnold's young too. But in today's NFL, this is the only thing I talk about with Derek Carr is that, look, if you're looking at the quote unquote new NFL, if you look at quarterbacks who are doing a little more with their feet. Now, Darnold can do it too. I just think overall that Watson is a better athlete, a better quarterback. That does not mean Sam Darnold can't be a successful quarterback in the NFL or that he couldn't successfully lead another team. I believe that. But I don't know. I mean, it's interesting. You think about that. And of course, we saw the big trade with Goff and Stafford. I never thought I knew the Rams were trying to get away from Jared Goff, but I never thought that he would end up. I thought that Stafford would end up either in Denver or in San Francisco. So again, there's a surprise. So anything can happen. But I think, when fans talk about that, and you talk about the Derek Carr divide, I think when fans talk about, upgrading at positions, even quarterback, people shouldn't get offended by it. Like, okay, say, hey, you know what? I disagree with you. I don't think the Raiders should go to another quarterback. I think Derek Carr is the guy they need to have. That's a perfectly good and balanced point of view. At the same time, exploring other opportunities isn't bad either. And so you have to ask yourself in this question, Homer, do you think that Sam Darnold is better than Derek Carr. If you think so, then hey, why not talk about that, right? But if you don't think he's better, or that he won't lead the Raiders as well as Derek Carr does, or doesn't have the same ability as Derek Carr, then you say, no, I'd rather stick with Derek Carr. So I think there's valid points on both sides. I think what happens is you get into the toxicity that is social media. And if you went out with that opinion, people are going to come back and say, oh, Homer, you're an idiot. You know what you're talking about. Sam Darnold sucks. Okay, well, great. You say so. That must be true, right? So I think that's where the argument devolves. Instead of saying, hey, you know what, Homer, I disagree with you. Here's why. And saying, Darnold does this, A, B, C, and D, and Carr does A, B, C, and D much better. And so I think they're better off staying with it. I think we need to have conversations. And to me, people have weak conversations when they don't have data or well thought intentions behind it. So if they just call you an idiot because you suggest it, I think that's just as wrong as if somebody was doing the opposite. So, who knows? I think it's going to be a fascinating offseason for the Raiders. I think one mistake people make is that they think to themselves that, for example, well, the Raiders defense did great. Offense. It was the defense. And no doubt, the defense is number one priority. It has to be because it's so bad. But that doesn't mean you don't get better on offense. And if that means you go get a wide receiver, if that means you get another running back, or if you get another quarterback, if it makes you better, then it has to be on the table.
And we were having that same conversation before you came on. We were having that same conversation, Scott, before you came on. And Homer was talking about Sam Darnold. And I told him, I said, the thing I like about this podcast is we can come on and we can disagree with each other. But you're bringing your opinion, but we can respectfully disagree and say, okay, you have your opinion. And I'll be the first one to admit if I'm wrong. But we'll just see how it plays out.
No, I agree. And this past week on Friday's show on Raider Nation Radio, we had on Vic Tafer about his story about Nelson Aguilar. And, I had a lot of people, oh, this is ridiculous. He's lying. We have players that say he's lying. And I'm like, look, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean that you don't talk about it. It's a story. And so, anybody who watched the Raiders all year, and for me, being at games and being at practices, the idea, we heard Derek Carr, we heard John Gruden, we heard Mike Mayock, we heard Nicholas Morrow, we heard Alec Engold all talk about how the team had to be more committed. So when you see a story like that, it's not surprising to me. As I said Friday as well, that you shouldn't take it as a negative, because that means that they're having the process of growth. They're having the process of getting better. And if a veteran guy, Nelson Aguilar, who has a Super Bowl ring, by the way, which none of the other Raiders have, if somebody says that, it doesn't mean it's some big shocking, controversy. It just means that, hey, they need to focus on getting the right guys in there. And the fact that they're recognizing it, and the fact that they're talking about it, even the players are talking about it. Okay, not as in explosive terms as was in Vic's story, but they're talking about it means that they've recognized what they need to fix. It's when you don't recognize what you need to fix, when you really go down a rat hole, and that becomes a problem.
Now, speaking of things that we got to fix, right? Knowing that there's a long offseason ahead of us, can you tell us who you think is going to make a big leap in terms of performance from 2020 into 2021?
Yeah, I think, geez, you look at a lot of guys. Number one, a guy who I was really, really excited about this year for the Raiders, they went out and signed, was Corey Littleton. And Corey Littleton, he said it himself, just had a bad year. He was very disappointing. They paid a lot of money for him, and they were really counting on him, and he didn't come through. I think you're going to see, with the defensive coordinator change, with Gus Bradley coming in, and with the fact that they'll use Corey Littleton the way he's supposed to be used, I think you'll see a massive jump from him there as well. And then I would hope to see, the one I hope to see, but I'm uncertain about, is Jonathan Abram. I think Jonathan Abram, I think it's a make or break year for him, because he's in his rookie contract. And I know Raider fans love him because he brings some of that old time swagger to the field, but he can't stay on the field. He's made many, many mistakes. We'll see how much of that was scheme and coaching, but he needs to mature. He's got the talent, but can he mature enough to where he takes just a little bit of that edge off and plays smarter versus just playing physical? I think those two guys, if those two guys make a big light year jump over last year, this defense will be so much better. And then you add in whoever they draft and whoever else they sign in free agency. And I think this defense can make the jump it needs to. Remember, guys, the defense only has to be middle of the road. It does not have to be a top 10 defense for this team to make the playoffs.
And I'm very curious to see where Tanner Muse fits in when he comes back from injury.
Yeah, full disclosure, I'm not a fan of that pick. I still am not. I am not hopeful for Tanner Muse. He's a great kid and all that. I think they drafted him too high, and I think he's going to be a really great special teams player. But I'm not expecting a lot for him. But if he does, and I'm wrong about it, I'll be the first one to admit it. And clearly, if he is better than I think, then that would help this team significantly as well.
So what you're telling me is he's going to be next year's Dallin Levitt.
Maybe. Levitt had that big interception, though, so I don't know. Tanner Muse hurt his toe and couldn't get on the field all season, so we'll see. But, I think that position, though, that hybrid safety linebacker position is becoming more prevalent in the NFL. And a kid I like more, not just because I went to the school or because he's from Sacramento, actually, but went to school here in Las Vegas, is Javen White, who's the same position basically. And I think he has a little more upside, even though he didn't play at Clemson and have that pedigree. But if one of those two guys can hit, then that'll significantly improve the defense for sure.
I'm still a believer in Muse. I think the kid's got great speed, enough speed to make up for mental mistakes in the NFL. And then you talk about being that hybrid player. I think that's where we really need some help on the defense. That guy that you can leave on the field in passing and run situations. Now, I know that he had the toe injury and all that, but I'm curious how much of that was they felt like he was a developmental player anyways. Mm-hmm. And so they went ahead and just put him on, gave him put him through whatever surgery he might have needed, or just to correct something, just to kind of hold on to him, because I think that was actually a pretty good pick, and I think he's going to come into fruition. I really do.
Well, you know what? I hope you're right and I'm wrong. I really do, because I think that would be better for the Raiders. But yeah, where they chose him in the draft, it's nothing wrong with drafting guys that are developmental players. As high as he went, though, you usually don't get developmental guys there. And we saw obviously with Lynn Bowden Jr. what happened there. And hopefully that's not the case here, where it's a guy that never makes it on the field. But hey, he's got an opportunity, and a lot of guys take advantage of that. So again, hopefully you're right and I'm wrong.
Hey, check it out. So Corey Littleton, you were talking about him. We really wanted him to come, and yes, it was not a good year at all. Now, you talk about using him the correct way. This is a debate that we've been having. I feel like we need to draft players on defense before we sign them in free agency, because of players like Nassib, Collins, Littleton, Joyner, right? You say, well, we get Bradley and he might put him in the right spot, and that's what we're all hoping for. But in my mind, it seems like these defenders, they either need to be in the 4-3 or the 3-4, a safety or a DB. They're not that great at being interchangeable, as opposed to the offense when, I would rather spend my free agency money there with an Aguilar or whatnot, because those guys play XYZ at the wide receiver position. You see Waller move out to the wide receiver position. You saw Denzel Good go from guard to tackle. So I feel like free agency should be spent, that money should be spent on the offense, and then draft young in the defense, because this league is so offensively driven now. It's almost like you overpay for players like a Khalil Mack. You know what I mean? Yes, you got a great defense, and that's what got them into the playoffs. But at the same time, you want to get to the playoffs, of course, but then you want to go to the Super Bowl. So I don't know. I feel like, here we are talking about cap situation. It's dangerous in today's NFL to sign defenders to big contracts, instead of offenders. What do you think about that? Or offensive players?
Yeah, no, I mean, I see your point of view on that. I think it's valid. At the same time, I would say that, yes, I think developing young defensive players is key, right? Because I say it all the time, and Michael Lombardi, of course, who used to work for the Raiders and now is in the radio business as well as writing for The Athletic, he says it all the time, and I kind of pick it up and use it all the time, which is there's nothing more valuable in the NFL than a rookie contract, right? Because you get all that great talent, and the cost for you up front is a lot less than you go out and get a big name free agent. That said, I do think that the Raiders have good young talent on defense. It's been underutilized. Like, you talk about Max Crosby, who we now know played with a broken hand and a hurt shoulder that he just had surgery on for half the season. So that tells you that guy's got some cojones, and he is the real deal. He didn't have any help, though. And so, they signed Malik Collins. They signed Littleton. They signed Kwiatkowski. They signed these guys up front that really they got nothing out of. And to me, that's on John Gruden and Mike Mayock. They did not sign the right guys. Carl Nassib is a perfect poster boy. I agree with you, Homer. At the same time, though, if you can go out in free agency and get a guy, not a budget guy, but a top line defensive end or tackle who looks across the line at the quarterback and the quarterback's worried about where he is. If you can get that guy in free agency, I think it's worth the money. So, and there's not a ton of those guys out there. So my point of view would be, if you can get, even though he's up in years and he's had some injury issues, if you can get a JJ Watt, then that, to me, that's a no-brainer if it fits well and they can fit it within the budget. At the same time, you also get some young guys up front to do it. But they've gone the young route. They said last year that, listen, they took a gamble. It's fitting they came to Vegas, because what they did is they took all their chips and they pushed them out on the table on the young defense rookie side. And they said, okay, we're putting all our money on this. If it works out, great, awesome. If it doesn't, we're in trouble. And we saw what happened. The rookies struggled. Now, there are a lot of reasons for that. A lot of it, I think, was coaching and the fact that they weren't getting coaching and the commitment there on the defense. There is some dysfunction there. Now, you have a new guy coming in. You have Ron Miles on the back end with the defensive backs, who's one of the best defensive backs in the league, who's come in. And so I think you'll get more out of that young talent. But I do think if they can get what Q and I call on the show all the time, that alpha dog on defense, whether it's up front or in the secondary at maybe the other safety position, I think that'll do good. But that's why I've said, Homer, I don't be surprised. Raider fans like, 17th pick, we got to take a defensive player. Don't be so sure. If you get to 17 and there's a really good, impactful offensive player there and they address it in the defense in other areas, then they might go offense. You don't know. It all depends how the draft falls. But I do think that in the NFL, the last thing you can ever do is go into an offseason thinking, oh, we're good on offense, or, oh, we're good on defense. You constantly have to find new pieces to get better.
With Gus Bradley, there will be some new schemes and a lot of teaching involved. Looking at the 3 units, defensive line, linebackers, and defensive backs, where do you think the biggest priority is going to have to be looking at free agency?
That's a great question, Heidi. I think that number one has got to be defensive line. All you got to do is look at the last 4 years with quarterback sacks and pressuring the quarterback. And to me, the Raiders just have not done it, and that's no disrespect to Max Crosby and the job he did as a rookie. And then this year, he really didn't have much help. They didn't get anything out of the other side of the defensive end, and then up the middle at the tackle position, they just didn't. They got some things, Cleveland Farrell, I think, will be better. He's got to do even better than that. And so you have to see a big jump out of him in year 3. To me, that's really vital. But I think they need to address the pass rush because remember, even at linebacker and defensive back, it makes it much more difficult for the defense if they can't pressure the quarterback. And then remember that guy who lives in Kansas City, who wears number 15? Yeah, he's in the division. He's not going anywhere, okay? And so you have to look at the quarterbacks. You have Justin Herbert now with the Chargers. You have these guys who are dynamic quarterbacks who can move. You have got to pressure the quarterback. You have got to make the quarterback uncomfortable. You look at the Raiders win against the Chiefs earlier this season in Kansas City. What did they do? They effectively impacted Patrick Mahomes enough where he didn't play his best, and the Raiders were able to win. They got the interception, the only loss the Chiefs have had in 27 games, right? So that shows you how important it is in the division, because remember, if the Raiders are going to win a Super Bowl again, they got to go through Kansas City. That's just the bottom line. And so if you're going to do that, you have to address the needs up front, and you have to address them now. So whether that's through the draft or free agency or both, which I think is probably the answer, you have got to pressure the quarterback. That said, they need a thumper at linebacker too. Corey Littleton's not a thumper. He's a guy who's going to cover sideline to sideline. Nick Kwiatkowski, good linebacker. That was a good acquisition, but he is not that type of linebacker who's going to put fear in the quarterback's eyes, right? So I think they need to address that. And on the back end, I think Damon Arnett, with some maturity and some coaching, will get better. I think Trayvon Mullen on the other side is a good player and is developing nicely. And then we talked about Jonathan Abram earlier. So I think you need a free safety to go along with the strong safety Abram. So you need players at all 3 levels, Heidi. But I think the utmost important number one priority for the Raiders has got to be up front.
I agree.
Yeah, you build from the trenches out for sure.
Absolutely. Offense and that's why the offensive line, right? You talk about the Raiders' offensive line. That's why it's so important because it's not the sexy stuff everybody likes to talk about, but But if you look at the teams in the Super Bowl, the Buccaneers and the Chiefs, you look up front and what they have, and that's where they win the games. Yes, you got Patrick Mahomes, you got Tyreek Hill and all, and Travis Kelce, all those guys in offense are all amazing, but they're winning it up front because they're giving their quarterback the time he needs to throw the ball. And then on defensively, they're putting enough pressure on the same thing. And the same thing goes with Tampa Bay. They improved their offensive line before they got, or as they were getting Tom Brady, and it's made the biggest difference.
Yeah, it's like Peggy said in last week's episode, the Raiders have been building their defense from the back to the front. We need to start building it from the front to the back.
Yep, I agree 100%.
We talked about this last week too, and Mark Schlereth many times on different broadcasts would come on and talk about building both the offensive and defensive lines, talking about the big uglies.
Mm-hmm.
He would say you really have to win in the trenches, and you have to rely on those big uglies on both the offensive and defensive sides of the ball.
Yeah, you do. And I think too that, just so people realize, because the Raiders offensive line gets a lot of pub about being one of the best in the league. And this year, of course, they had their challenges with COVID and injuries and all that kind of stuff. But I think there's also the need there too. I would expect the Raiders to make a draft pick or two and a free agent signing on the offensive line too, because you need more depth there. You don't know what's going to happen with Richie Incognito. You don't know what's happened with Trent Brown. I don't think Trent Brown will be back, so that's another big hole you got to fill. So you got to focus on that. So if Raider fans, I know if it's not one of these sexy positions, they sometimes get disappointed in the pick like they did with Colton Miller, but those are so vital.
All right, Scott, how do you see the whole sports scene continuing to grow in Las Vegas? And how do you think that will affect the Raiders from a long-term perspective?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I always talk about the situation in Las Vegas being a professional sports renaissance, because we went from having 0 teams, right, to getting the Golden Knights, who made the Stanley Cup Finals in their first year and continue to be, right now, they're the favorite to win the Stanley Cup this season, even though it's shortened. And then, of course, the Raiders coming here as well. And then we have, professional baseball, which is AAA, which is the A's AAA affiliate, the Las Vegas Aviators. We have the Las Vegas Aces of the WNBA, so that's the other professional major league team, basically. And then there's rumors now too of Las Vegas being one of the 2 cities, along with Seattle, that will be part of NBA expansion. And baseball is flirting with Las Vegas already. There was some conversation last year about the Arizona Diamondbacks moving here because they want a new stadium down there, and Phoenix hasn't really come to the table yet. So I think if you look at Las Vegas as a market, now this is all pre-COVID. Now after COVID, our state has been hammered because we depend, 90% of our economy is driven by tourism. And so there's a lot of people out of work here. There's a lot of companies here who are struggling because of that. So it changes the dynamic just a bit. But I think that the appeal of Las Vegas is it's a very diverse market. People make good livings here, and the cost of living is still low, although it's going up with the influx of folks from California coming in. But I do think that Las Vegas will see in the next 10 years, and that's going down the line. But in the next 10 years, I do see at least definitely one other professional team coming here, and then possibly 2 if you consider NBA and Major League Baseball. Major League Baseball is the more difficult one because even though we're now at about 2.5 million people here in the Las Vegas Valley, I think you got to get closer to 3 million before baseball really starts to look at it because you have so many dates. But nonetheless, I think that it's going to continue to grow. And the success of the Golden Knights and now the Raiders, it's important that the Raiders are successful. If the Raiders are successful next year when it's open to fans and they see that stadium full all the time and it builds a lot of momentum, then I think the other sports leagues will do that. But I do think it'll happen. And I think for the Raiders, it's nothing but good, because if you look at the professional sports landscape, NFL reigns supreme always. It doesn't matter if you have a Major League Baseball team, if you have a hockey team, if you have an NBA team, NFL is always going to be number one. So for Las Vegas, getting the NFL was the biggest domino that could fall. And so you look at that and you look at the success that the Golden Knights have had here. It shows that Las Vegas can support professional sports teams. We're not just a city where a bunch of people come in and visit. Again, I said there's 2.5 million people here, people from all walks of life who have disposable income. It gets more competitive the more teams you add. But again, it's the NFL. You have, including preseason, you have 10 dates a year. That's it. So no matter what happens, no matter if the NBA and Major League Baseball come, I think that the Raiders and the NFL will always be number one in the market. So I don't think it does anything but help the Raiders validate their move. but I don't think they have anything to worry about from a competitive standpoint.
I can't wait to make my next trip to Vegas, and I hope it will be for the 2021 season.
Yes, I'm confident that'll happen. I really am.
Man, I went there last year for the home opener. Even though we couldn't get in, Raider Nation showed up, and it was a blast. And yeah, I can't wait to get in and see that stadium.
Yeah, I can't wait for you to be there either, because I'll tell you what, going to all the games this year in that beautiful stadium, it was annoying to be in there and have it quiet. I mean, I that game with the Chiefs, which unfortunately they lost at the end. If Raider Nation was there, if all you guys were in the stadium, I have no doubt that even that porous defense would have mustered one more stop, and we might be looking at a whole different season.
If Abram just would have stayed back, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, Q and I were sitting together in the press box for that one. He was out here for that, and we said the same thing in real time. We're like, oh my gosh, where is he at? Where's he going? Where's he going? And sure enough, bam.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was a rough one.
All right, Scott, thanks for joining us today on the Only Nation podcast.
Thank you guys for having me on. I mean, it's a pleasure to come on, and I appreciate you guys and everything you're doing, and keeping Raider Nation informed with level-headed, good discussions. And like you said, you might not all agree all the time, but that's what it's all about. That's what fandom's about. It's about loving your team, and just because other people have different views or different solutions to what you think the team's problems are, it doesn't matter. As long as you guys, at the end of the day, you can argue, you can have fun with it, and then at the end of it, have a Modelo together and relax and love your team. And I think that's the important thing. But other than that, no, I mean, I'd love for people to listen to the show. Of course, you can listen to the Raider Nation Radio right on the Raiders app. So if you have the Raiders app on your phone, you just click the radio on the right side, and we're on 2 to 4 every day. And of course, there's a morning show with Pritch and Clay, and then JT's right before me from 12 to noon, and then Vinny after from 4 to 6. So we appreciate it. It's been so amazing. And I can't imagine doing a radio show about any other team with any other fan base, because every day Raider Nation brings not only the passion and the loyalty, but when they call in, they bring knowledge. We don't get really dumb callers. You know what I'm saying? I listen to some fan bases, they don't know what they're talking about, but Raider Nation never disappoints. And I certainly appreciate that. I feel blessed to be able to cover the team that you guys love.
Scott, living in the DC area, I can tell you that the app is certainly the way to go. And it's certainly nice to be able to get information about the Raiders from so far away. And I think a lot of people feel connected in the same regard.
Yeah, and that's one thing I love to give the organization kudos for is putting that link in the app, because again, you don't see that with other NFL teams. If you go to any of the other situations with radio deals, and you don't see that, you just don't see a connection to the local radio station right from the team's NFL official app. But again, the Raiders are doing something that no one's ever done before, and that's the fact that they have a station dedicated to just their team, and I think it's pretty remarkable.
Oh, yeah. And you know what, Scott? Thanks again for coming on the podcast. Congratulations on all your success and how far you've come. Even though you were a Chargers fan, you're killing it on Raider Nation Radio, and I'm looking forward to hearing you the rest of the week. I
appreciate that, man. You guys are doing a great job, and again, thank you all for all you do. And the only thing I'd say in closing to all of you, including your listeners, is hang in there. There's always brighter days ahead, and it's always darkest before the dawn.
All right. Thank you very much.
All right, Scott. Thanks again for coming on.
All right. Yeah, Scott. Thanks a lot.
Hey, man, anytime you guys need anything, just reach out, okay?
All right, cool. Scott's a cool guy, you know. He listened to my opinion, and he didn't say they were batshit crazy. See, that's how you're supposed to do it, Raider Nation. You can debate, you know what I mean? But you can say this and you can say that. But remember, in the end, we all want to stay unified as a nation. So let's not bash each other, you know.
Healthy
let's just
debate is a good thing.
All right, Raider Nation, give us a call at 904-701-8667. Leave a voicemail or text message at that number, or send in a message via social media, and we will be sharing your thoughts.
Hey Homer, did you know?
All right, now, so we're changing up the format of the Hey Homer, Did You Know segment. In this new and improved version, I'm going to ask Homer and all of our listeners a Raiders-related question with 3 possible answers to choose from. So it's multiple choice. Then I will give you the answer. So let's give it a try tonight. Here is this week's version of Homer Did You Know? In 1979, Tom Flores, in his first year as head coach, brought in troubled defensive lineman John the Twos Matuzak to help bolster a troubled and depleted defensive line. But Coach Flores was worried about the Twos' behavior and motivation, so he asked one of the Raider players to be his roommate and basically his handler. So who did Flores select to be the Twos' roommate and handler? Was it A, Ted Hendricks, B, Ray Guy, or C, Ken Stabler?
A, Ted Hendricks.
Heidi, what do you think?
Ray Guy.
The answer is actually C, Ken Stabler. Imagine that.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So Flores pitched the idea to Stabler, and Stabler said, well, he's kind of a party guy anyway, so I'll keep an eye on him. And they kind of ran together for a while. So just imagine Ken Stabler and the Twos out together on the town all the time.
That's why I didn't picture them being together.
Only the Raiders.
And that about does it for this week. Thank you so much for joining us on the Only Nation podcast. We won't be here next week because we'll all be sick from what's going on in the Super Bowl. So don't look for an episode from us on next Monday. We might put up a best of episode, but it won't be a new episode. If you'd like to help support the show, buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/onlynationpod. You can find me, Heidi Stabbert, on social media as @Kevlar Prom Dress on Twitter and Instagram, or Heidi Stabbert on Facebook.
Raider Nation, our Google number is 904-701-8667. Leave us a voicemail or send us a text message to that number. You can also email us at onlynationpod@gmail.com. You can find us on both Twitter and Instagram by going to @onlynationpod. And we're also on Facebook and YouTube at The Only Nation Podcast. Be sure to hit like and follow wherever you catch us on social media. Subscribe to us on your favorite podcasting app and toss up a 5-star review if you think we're up to it. You can also find me, Raider Homer, on social media by searching Raider Homer on Facebook and searching the Raider Homer channel Facebook group. You can find me on Instagram by searching Raider Homer, and you can find me on Twitter @HomerRaider.
And this is T3 once again reminding you how important it is for the growth of this show for us to get your input. Send us your name and address so we can send you some free Raider swag. Call us and tell us what you want to know. Throw us an interesting nugget so we can use that on one of our upcoming episodes and become a part of what we're doing here. Remember, this is the Only Nation, and we want you to be a part of it. So call us, 904-701-8667. That's 904-701-8667. Call us now and join the Only Nation podcast family. You can find me on social media on Twitter at T3_sports703, on YouTube at T3 Sports Guy, and on Facebook at Tom THOM Jones.
As always, we look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, everyone, go Raiders.
Go Raiders.
We're not just a nation, we are the only nation.